As you watch this, dozens of oil tankers are sitting at anchor outside the Persian Gulf, waiting to see what happens next. Insurance premiums for ships moving through the region have surged. Shipping companies are slowing transit through one of the most important waterways on Earth. Because when the Strait of Hormuz looks unstable, the entire energy market reacts instantly. Every single day, roughly 21 million barrels of oil pass through a gap in the ocean that's only 21 miles wide. That's about 1/5 of the entire world's oil supply, squeezed through a corridor so narrow that tankers can only travel in 2 lanes, each one just 2 miles across. The Strait of Hormuz sits between Iran and Oman, connecting the Persian Gulf to the open sea. And the terrifying part isn't just how much oil flows through it. It's what happens to the global economy if that flow stops, even for a few days. Because right now, the country that controls the northern shore of that strait has every reason to threaten it. To understand why this 21-mile stretch of water matters more than almost any other place on Earth, you have to understand what sits behind it. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Qatar, Iraq, 5 of the largest oil-producing nations on the planet. And every single one of them relies on the Strait of Hormuz to get their crude to market. On top of that, Qatar exports more liquefied natural gas than almost any country in the world. Most of it passes through the same bottleneck. Put real numbers on it, roughly 17 to 20 million barrels of crude oil transit the strait every single day. That's on top of about a quarter of the world's liquefied natural gas trade. Combined, the energy value passing through Hormuz on an average Tuesday is worth billions of dollars. No other choke point on the planet even comes close. And here's the problem. There is no real alternative route. Saudi Arabia operates a pipeline that can bypass the strait, but it only handles a fraction of its exports. The UAE built a pipeline to Fujairah on the other side of the Gulf, but again, limited capacity. For the vast majority of Gulf energy, Hormuz is the only way out. And what makes it dangerous is geography. The shipping lanes run directly along Iran's coastline. Iranian military installations sit on islands inside the strait itself. Their patrol boats operate in these waters constantly. So the country with the strongest incentive to disrupt global energy markets has a front row seat to every barrel that passes through. But controlling a choke point only matters if the world actually depends on what flows through it. And the world's dependence on Hormuz goes far deeper than just filling gas tanks. Here's something that trips people up. The United States doesn't actually import much oil through the Strait of Hormuz anymore. American shale production changed that equation years ago. So at first glance, you might think a disruption wouldn't affect the United States very much. But that's not how oil markets work. Oil is priced on a global market. When supply from Hormuz is threatened, it doesn't matter where your oil comes from. The price goes up everywhere, immediately. A tanker threatened in the Gulf of Oman raises gas prices in New Jersey just as fast as it does in Tokyo. And that price increase cascades through everything. Shipping costs rise, airlines pay more for fuel, manufacturers pay more for energy and raw materials. Those costs get passed to consumers, which drives inflation. Central banks respond by raising interest rates. And suddenly, a shipping lane in the Middle East is slowing economies on the other side of the planet. But there's another layer to this system that rarely gets discussed. Gulf oil states sell their crude in US dollars. Then, they reinvest a massive portion of that revenue back into American assets. Treasury bonds, real estate, technology investments. Saudi Arabia alone holds hundreds of billions of dollars in US securities. So when Hormuz is threatened, it's not just the oil supply that becomes unstable. It's also the flow of capital that helps finance the American economy. One choke point, 21 miles across. And suddenly, the entire global supply chain starts to wobble. That's the invisible chain connecting the Strait of Hormuz to the price of bread in a grocery store 6,000 miles away. Understanding the chain is one thing. The real question is, what happens when someone decides to pull on it? Iran has known for decades that it cannot match the United States militarily. Not in the air, not at sea, not on land. A direct confrontation would be catastrophic for Tehran. But Iran realized something many people overlook. You don't have to defeat a superpower, you only have to threaten the system that superpower depends on. And Iran's leverage is built directly into geography. Their coastline runs along the entire northern edge of the strait. They've fortified islands inside it. They've deployed anti-ship cruise missiles along the shore. They operate fleets of small, fast boats designed specifically to swarm tankers in tight waters. And they've already demonstrated they're willing to use it. In 2019, Iran seized a British-flagged oil tanker in the strait. That same year, explosions damaged tankers near the Gulf of Oman in attacks widely attributed to Iranian forces. Oil prices jumped immediately. Iran has also invested heavily in naval mine warfare. The strait is shallow enough in key areas that mines can be deployed quickly and are extremely difficult to clear. During the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, a single Iranian mine nearly sank the USS Samuel B. Roberts. Modern mines are far more advanced than those used 40 years ago. More recently, rising tensions in the region have disrupted tanker traffic again. Insurance premiums for ships transiting the strait have surged. Some shipping companies have rerouted entirely, adding weeks and millions of dollars in costs. Oil prices have pushed above $100 per barrel during the worst escalations. Several countries have even released oil from strategic reserves to stabilize markets. And this is the real leverage. Iran doesn't need to close the strait permanently. They don't even need to sink a tanker. All they have to do is create enough uncertainty, insurers raise rates, shipping companies reroute, markets panic, and billions of dollars move overnight. But there is a darker scenario that military planners have been studying for years. What happens if the Strait of Hormuz actually closes? Even temporarily, the numbers become staggering. Analysts estimate that a full closure would remove 17 to 20 million barrels per day from global supply, nearly 1/5 of the world's oil consumption, gone overnight. Oil prices wouldn't just spike, they would go vertical. Some projections suggest prices could hit $200 or even $300 per barrel within weeks. And because there's no physical way to reroute that volume of oil quickly, the shortage would be real, not just speculative. Countries heavily dependent on Gulf oil would face immediate crises. Japan imports nearly 90% of its oil. A huge portion of it passes through Hormuz. South Korea faces a similar dependency. India is another major importer. These are not small economies. They are among the largest industrial powers on Earth, and modern economies run on just-in-time supply chains with minimal reserves, which means the ripple effects wouldn't take months. They would begin within days. The United States holds roughly 400 million barrels in its strategic petroleum reserve. At a 20 million barrel per day shortfall, that reserve buys about 20 days. After that, the math becomes very uncomfortable. And this is exactly why the United States maintains the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, just inside the Persian Gulf. It's why aircraft carriers rotate through the region constantly. The military presence isn't just about alliances. It's about keeping 21 miles of water open, because the global economy literally depends on it. As of today, March 15th, 2026, we are no longer talking about what if. Following the joint U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iranian military assets last week, the IRGC has officially declared the Strait of Hormuz a massacre zone. Over 150 tankers are currently sitting at anchor outside the Gulf, paralyzed by a war risk insurance rate that has jumped 400% in 10 days. The system isn't just breathing, it's choking. President Trump has stated that the U.S. Navy is prepared to annihilate any threat to the waterway. But geography remains Iran's greatest weapon. They don't need a massive navy to win, they just need to make the math of shipping so expensive that the world forces a ceasefire. Is this a temporary spike? Or are we witnessing the permanent end of the Hormuz era? If the strait stays effectively closed through April, analysts warn of a $200 barrel and a global recession that no central bank can stop. The 21-mile chain is being pulled. And right now, the whole world is at the other end. If you want to see another system the world depends on but rarely thinks about, that video is on screen now.